What's up, a Cinema Shogun here, and I just got back from seeing Evil Dead Rises. Don't worry, there will be no spoilers in this video. This is simply my initial thoughts and reaction to this film. And my initial reaction is that this movie gets the job done. I think that is the best way that I could describe my initial reaction to this movie. That it gets the job done. I don't love this movie. I don't hate this movie. I don't dislike this movie. But at the same time, I don't like this movie enough to necessarily sing its praises. But it got the job done. I'm not disappointed. But then again, I am not a huge Evil Dead fan. But I have seen all of the movies, and I would say that this would probably be my least favorite. But that doesn't mean that this is a bad movie. I think it's kind of a solid entry into the Evil Dead franchise, and it made me start looking at the Evil Dead franchise a little differently. I feel like we could crank out one of these movies every couple of years and just keep the party rolling. It's a serviceable horror film. It's not legendary. It's not something that I'm going to rewatch a lot. It's not something really necessarily special. But I would show up next year, the year after, to watch another installment, to watch this evil prey on someone else, if you will. As far as this movie goes, though, my main complaint would be that this movie kind of just goes all in from the beginning. And I think a lot of people may appreciate that. But in many ways, it's like this movie goes from 0 to 100 really quickly. And I think that for once I would have benefited from a little more time getting to know the characters, getting to sit with the characters, being able to feel the family dynamic between the family that is in this film. You know, a lot of the Evil Dead movies, when you think of Evil Dead movies, you kind of maybe think of Friends, going to a cabin or something like this, but this really dives into a family aspect. And that was its strong suits. Because you're looking at someone having to, battle their mother, if you will, and things like that. I don't want to reveal too much here, but I feel like there should have been more of that. The creepiest parts of this movie was, just sitting there watching this possessed mother interact with her kids and say all type of wild stuff to them. And even though there's a lot of that in the film, I think it could have used even more. It should have leaned into that even heavier. The aspect of having a parent that is possessed, if you will, or whatever you would like to call it. So in many ways, even though the movie is kind of all about that, I feel like they could have and should have leaned into it a little more, because that was the scariest part of the film. Now, this movie has its fair share of blood and gore, just like any other Evil Dead movie. I'm not a blood and gore type of guy. It doesn't necessarily throw me off, but movies that just go over the top with it, I don't need it. I don't find that really scary. I enjoy suspense and building suspense, as opposed to all of the blood and gore. But I know that freaks a lot of people out, and some people love that. What I will say is that this movie does it properly, and Evil Dead has always done that for me. Even though Evil Dead, it will go over the top with blood and gore, it feels necessary, and it's understandable in the franchise. And I don't know, it's kind of a staple of the franchise, so I never have an issue with it. Whereas a movie that I watched recently, like The Terrifier 2, I just think they went too overboard. They went overboard to the point that it kind of took me out the movie. Whereas this, it all makes sense and it's perfectly understandable, if you will. I think it was pretty scary. I gotta say that this is one of the first horror movies that I've watched in theaters in a very long time, other than the recent Halloween franchise. I got to a point where I only have so much time. So as far as movies go, when I would go to the movies, it seemed like I was watching the big blockbusters, the big Marvel superhero films, Star Wars and stuff like that. And I stopped going to smaller movies. Recently, I've been going to smaller movies again, and it's crazy because tonight, going to see this movie, there was a good crowd of people there. And when I saw the Super Mario Bros. Movie last week or the week before, there was a good amount of people there. But the last 2 years or so of going to superhero movies, I've been like the only one in the theater. So it's nice to kind of feel the energy again. I won't say this movie is something that I necessarily need to see in theaters. In fact, I would say this movie is kind of, I don't know what it is about horror movies. They're scarier to me when I'm at home. Like, I dig the surround sound and the loudness in the theater and stuff like that, but horror movies just are always scarier for me when I'm at home. This movie, I will say it felt somewhat claustrophobic, but then again, you kind of always get that from the Evil Dead franchise. So don't expect to be all over the place in this movie. It's kind of all focused in one little apartment. There were a lot of things that I would have done differently, but at the end of the day, there's not too much that I could really complain about here. My main complaint would be, like I said, that I would have appreciated getting to sit with these characters a little bit more before things just started going wild. But you really don't get that chance. You really don't get that chance at all. It kind of just, it starts out crazy and then it dials it down for about 5 or 10 minutes and then it's just balls to the wall from there. But all in all, a solid horror movie, a solid addition to the franchise. What I'm interested in seeing is how diehard fans of this franchise feel. I do feel like this movie maybe will be divisive. I feel like, some people will love it, some people will hate it. I think the fact that I'm not a huge fan of the Evil Dead franchise, I think that definitely plays a factor into how I feel about the movie. I don't know if I was a diehard fan, if I would like this movie more or I would like it less. So I kind of just come right in the middle. But I would like to know how diehard fans of the franchise feel. Because, that's who's most important when it comes to this movie and any movie. I always like when the diehard fans are pleased. So when it comes to this, I don't know. I think that there's going to be a mixed bag of reactions out there. But at the end of the day, I can't say that this is just a crappy film or anything like that, because it falls kind of in place with the other Evil Dead movies. It just doesn't feel as, I don't know how to, this doesn't feel like it will become a cult classic, if you will. Like the other Evil Dead movies, they hold this special spot in just film history, in my opinion. This movie doesn't necessarily feel as special as the other Evil Dead movies for me, which is why I say I feel like they could crank something like this out every couple of years, and it could be a habit of every couple of years you get an Evil Dead movie around Halloween or something like that. So does that cheapen the brand, or would you be happy with that? Let me know down in the comments below. I will say it definitely looks like they are setting it up for possibly more films. Let me know your thoughts though down below. While you're down there, hit the thumbs up, hit the subscribe, ring that notification bell, and I'll talk to you all in the next video.